Hey, welcome back to Culturally Sound. I am here with Matt Haney. He is the visionary leader of Sinclair Ventures. Matt, tell me a little bit more about Sinclair Ventures and what that's all about.
Yeah, thanks for having me today, Chandler. So we started Sinclair Ventures about 8 years ago. Like every business, it started as one thing, has evolved into where it is today. But our primary service is that we provide fractional COO services to visionary entrepreneurs that generally either are lacking a second in command, have a transitional need for a new second in command, or know they need to hire a COO, but don't quite know what they need and what skills are most important to them. So our team comes in, assesses the battlefield, if you will, and ends up putting the right people in the right seats so that they can grow to the next step.
I guess I don't know, let me know how you see it. But as bigger enterprises are getting sort of, I don't know, broken apart, the idea is that the gig economy is supposed to be sort of taken over and the solopreneurs are growing. And then you have these people with these great visions for these projects or products, and then they're sort of struggling with how to operate in essence, because they got into the business for a product or a service that they're passionate about, but it's the business itself that doesn't really run itself. And this is where you intersect.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, when I tell folks that, I have a great example of a client that, he's a hardwood flooring guy and his business is quite successful. They do, north of $10 million a year in revenue installing hardwood floors. And he'll tell you, he's like, I'm just a dumb wood installer, which is obviously not true because you don't get a business to $10 million being a quote unquote dumb wood installer. But the reality is that he started as a tradesman and grew his business and has outgrown his business. And the humility and vulnerability that it takes to say that out loud is what allows us to be successful with our clients. Is that I've gotten it to where, visionaries say, I've gotten it to where I can, I'm tapped out. I know I need something. I don't know what it is. Come help.
Beauty. And what got you started in this space? Take me back to where it all
Yeah.
began for you.
So my first job out of college was for a smaller, well, not small, but mid-sized family office. So a family that had invested in businesses and been successful, and now their way to grow their family wealth was to, continue to reinvest in things that would generate a return. So the family office decided they wanted to go out and raise some money and continue to buy single family homes as an investment strategy. So I was fortunate that I got to help buy, about 500 homes over a 5-year period with a visionary, financially minded um, operator. And he brought me in as an analyst. I begged him to give me a job, and he brought me as an analyst to go research houses and continue to try to buy investment homes. This was in 2005, ahead of the 2008 subprime lending crisis, which crashed the economy. But we were able to get great debt at great pricing and went and bought a bunch of homes. So that was my first job. And here I am sitting next to a visionary who, had the vision, but needed help executing it. And then when the financial crisis hit, I joined a consumer products company, again, next to a visionary leader who had a great idea, but was so early that he wasn't able to kind of materialize it. So we helped grow that business, which eventually got acquired by a private equity company. And then I started seeing this pattern. It's like, hey, I'm sitting next to these great visionary leaders, being their right hand. And I was young at the time. I was in my early 20s and didn't have a ton of business acumen or experience at the time. So kept using and stacking these opportunities. And I would go, 2 to 3 years in a stint of businesses. And then I'd just kind of be like, all right, I've gotten it through the chaos, the shit show, and now I need to do something else. So I kept seeing this pattern and going, man, instead of seeing this as a challenge, how can I turn this into an opportunity? And to make a really long story short, here we are today, 8 years into operating Sinclair Ventures as a fractional COO consultancy that works with small to mid-size entrepreneurs. I just realized that was my place. My place was in that seat next to the visionary, helping them articulate what they need and helping them execute.
What what lit your fire? to sort of dive in and like what really got you excited about that space
Yeah, I think
or
the interesting thing for me is that the diversity and the change really got me excited. What and still does to the day. I think what makes me successful and interested is that what I'm doing with the visionary entrepreneur I'm working with is not forever. They know it's not forever. I know it's not forever. And that creates a unique relationship between the visionary and me, the fractional COO. And then I get to be really candid, respectful, of course, but
Yep,
candid.
okay.
When I see things that are happening, I get to call it like I see it and say, hey, I think this is actually what's happening. You may or may not, Mr. or Miss Entrepreneur, you may or may not see it that way, but as a, interested but disinterested third party, this is what's happening. So that really gets me excited because, entrepreneurs are good at surrounding themselves by people that say yes. They're good at hiring people that say yes. And then they look up and they say, well, nobody knows how to do their job. Or they say some backhanded comment about, I'm the only person that knows this or that and this or that. And it's like, well, okay, you hire people to do what you tell them to do. And that's all they're going to do. So
Yeah.
I think that diversity gets me really excited. And, no two businesses are the same, but every business is the same. So it's finding the nuances in each of them and, coming in those first few weeks of an engagement are really invigorating because you're starting to learn and see uh, where the issues are and automatically thinking about how to, plan to solve for them.
So one of my clients asked me recently, and not even recently, a couple months ago, he said, Chandler, one thing that I don't really understand about your business is how do you get new clients? How do you, because, we work with clients on a communication basis, clients just don't raise up their hand and say, I'm a terrible communicator. I need help. How do you find those humble leaders to invite you into that space? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So the fortunate and unfortunate thing about my work is that it's a lot of referrals. And it's very hard. I always tell my clients you can't scale a business on referrals. And here I am, needing to eat my own medicine
Right.
so short story is a lot of referrals. Um, I work, a lot with recruiters who have needs for something like this. I also work with EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System implementers, folks that come in and stand up this EOS operating system inside businesses. So I work hand in hand with those folks.
Right.
Um, my network here in Austin is pretty deep after being here for 20 years.
Right.
So that helps drive some business. And then recently we've started, producing content, generating leads, and then also purchasing leads. So I'm not above saying what's working and what's not working, but the reality is that right now my best referral source is somebody that I've worked with previously and been successful with, or a recruiter that sees a need for me and has seen me work through various companies.
Okay. What are you recognizing? I mean, today the base is shifting quite quickly with the recent uptick and explosion of AI. And now the introduction of AI agents and Amazon and Shopify and Fiverr and everyone else sort of identifying, if AI can replace you, you're probably going to lose your job unless you can tell me how you can work with AI better. What is that landscape is drastically shifting. I would imagine the space that you're working within. What does that look like for you in the next 3 to 6 months on to a year, couple of years? Do you
Yeah,
have
no,
any?
I think it's a great question. And I do think AI is here to stay and is here going to be incredibly impactful forever. And I'm fully bought into it and using it in different ways. And, I think I see the biggest opportunity in analysis of data using AI. I think the average the average small to mid-sized entrepreneur has no clue what AI capabilities are in their business. I mean, that's the
Right.
reality. Like I know this because I deal with them all the time, and having had, close to 20 different engagements as a fractional COO, I can go back and characterize every one of them. And the
Mhm.
extent to which most people are using in my space, using AI right now is through meeting recordings and transcripts and action items from calls. That's
Mhm.
the majority.
Mhm.
I do see a lot of incredible opportunity with, like I said earlier, these financial analysis tools. Anyone that's using an Excel spreadsheet that they're exporting regularly and want to compare that week over week to create trends. Just that little bitty simple thing would allow for the average, business owner to say, hey, I've got these outputs. And if I can create them on a recurring pattern, I should get this dashboard of data that says, here's what I'm doing. And
Uh-huh.
here's a pattern. So I think that if you look at the millions and millions and millions and millions of small businesses in the world today, I say small, sub 50 million in revenue.
Yeah.
Um, there's an infinite amount of opportunity to implement small, bite-size, tangible AI-driven tools that will drastically change their business.
What's would that be top of the pyramid on things that you look at when you enter a space? Or, I mean, without
No, it's not. It's
the
not. The people are the first place to start,
yeah.
and that's there's not always, but every single time there's a people issue somewhere in the business that's causing duress or stress.
Uh-huh.
And most times that is because they've been, either put in a position without tenure,
Mhm.
or they've been promoted based on the fact that they've been there. And I think the best and biggest value I offer is helping leadership teams, cross departmentally communicate with each other and become unified, right? And having conversations, forcing that, not awkward, but forcing that conversation that says, hey, we should really be talking about this. And the systems and processes that I use
Mhm.
bubble those things to the top organically.
Love that.
We do quarterly reviews, which I don't know, Chandler, if you remember the last time you were in an office and you had a quarterly review. That I don't remember mine, but I do remember having them every quarter with all the people I've worked with for the last 8 years. And they're some of the most impactful conversations you'll ever have as an entrepreneur, period.
What does that look like? So you enter the room and your what's your opening conversation?
Yeah. So first of all, and you talk about in a quarterly review.
Or yeah.
Yeah, the first thing we do is put structure around it so the person knows that they're walking into and they're walking into it.
Excellent.
We go through the core values of the business and we measure that person against the core values in a very simple way: plus, minus, or plus minus,
Mhm.
right? So you got three options of a grading scale, and you go through each one of the core values in the business and you say, hey, how are we doing against these core values? And I rank them as a plus minus or a plus minus. And then I
Mhm.
asked them to do the same thing with me. I said, hey, I want you to be candid and honest with me. What are you seeing? How am I doing
Mhm.
against these core values? So
Nice.
that conversation immediately disarms the room, right? Because we're in a position of, I'm not here telling you what you've done only. I'm here saying,
Mhm.
I need you to give me feedback as well in order to be a good leader. So that's the first thing. And we do that ahead of time. I give you a ranking, Chandler, you rank me, and we sit down and we have that conversation. Anything with a minus, obviously, it bubbles up the conversation because it says, hey, I'm looking across the table here and I'm seeing that this value you're not embodying in some form or fashion. And it's amazing how much constructive conversations can come from just being curious around what's happening with this person in and out of the office. So
Mhm.
to answer your question succinctly, we always have a format before we show up. And we always let the other person know what to expect when they get there so that they can come prepared and not have it be this kind of doomsday. Oh, am I going to get fired? Blah, blah, blah. So that's the
Yeah.
format I use and have had great success with.
And I mean, presumably these systems that you're introducing are not in effect when you come in. What's the most profound experience that you've had from, working with a leader of a company, of a space, from before you come in to after you come in, and sort of feedback on your impact based on
Yeah, no,
that sort of.
that's a great question. And I'm gonna use a not so good scenario that I think was a great impact, I'll
Great.
lead the witness here. So,
Okay.
post COVID, I was working as a fractional COO full time, but on a contract for a company that was really beat up by the COVIDs. They were in the office furniture space, so as you can imagine, offices closed down. People weren't buying office furniture. It was tough, and the business was created by a awesome big personality sales leader who, sales visionary CEO. So obviously, that personality is challenging, but we had to do a reorg. We had to rebuild the business, and it involved, reducing the workforce by about 40 people. And that was hard. But I was there at the right time, knowing that it was my role to help navigate through this. And one of the biggest things I saw, and I think that if the leadership team was on the call here, they would say, hey, my ability to be, objective and subjective at the same time, because it wasn't a business that I created. I was just brought in to help. So I'm able to look at it from an outside perspective, saying, I'm seeing some of these things over here that could probably help us, navigate this challenge. And I wasn't so close to it that it still hurts. I really tell people, when you're terminating or laying off anyone, you're affecting livelihood, and you're affecting livelihood in a way that you don't know what the outcome for that person's going to be when, 3, 6, 12 months down the road. So, to summarize it, I think being there during a tough time allowed me to help that leadership team and those entrepreneurs get from point A to point B. And that felt right. It felt like I was supposed to be there. So I think that's an example of not the pie in the sky. Oh, we went from this revenue mark to that revenue mark, or we did all these great things. Rather, business is hard, and this shit sucks sometimes. And having somebody there who can help was a ton of fun.
I think that's a core component of business ownership, and why maybe a lot of leaders who don't have, I don't know, I don't want to say self-confidence, but confidence in leadership, look to create sort of an echo chamber of yes men or yes people. Just respond with positivity, because it is so lonely and it is so hard to
Yeah.
be leading that charge all the time. They just want to feel like they have a little bit of support. Whereas
Right.
if we just change the perspective on that a little bit, where wouldn't it be better if you actually listen to what will actually get you further, that you're able to make informed decisions to change that trajectory, rather than just feel good? You're actually feeling good about the results that are happening and the participation of the team that you've invited in to be experts in their space. I think sort of before we recorded, you pointed to the idea of, the importance of the leader having the humility. How
Yeah.
often is that a barrier for you?
Man, you buzzword, humility, bing, bing, humility, vulnerability, those two words that I see. It's interesting. As I kind of look back at the 17 or so of these engagements I've done, over my career, there is a common theme. And the common theme is that those who are interested and capable
Mhm.
of being vulnerable and being humble are the ones that I still have amazing relationships with.
Mhm.
And the ones that aren't vulnerable and humble are the ones that are still spiraling. Spiraling is probably not fair. Swirling
Yeah. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the same bullshit that they were swirling in when they came in and asked me. And I mentioned this earlier. It's like being able to have a very candid conversation with someone who needs it is a very powerful thing, because most of these entrepreneurs that I deal with, and you mentioned this earlier, Chandler, They need and want somebody to be on their side. And sometimes they don't want to be told that they're right. They want to be challenged and they want to be put. So, and there have been a few engagements where I'm like, oh man, after 2 weeks in, I'm like, my hunch was correct. They sold me on a bill of goods, and when in fact they are who I thought they would be. And that doesn't make them terrible people. It just makes it really hard to be successful in my role. So I've had to fire a couple clients over the years because I made bad decisions on letting them get through the qualification process. If you look on my website, sinclairventures.com, there's a scroll to the bottom. It's like, oh yeah, no asshole policy. And I joke because that's the truth. Like, I want to be able to click the green button on the iPhone when your phone call comes in and not the red button and hang up. So, candor and humility and vulnerability is everything in life, in leadership, in business ownership. I think that's some of the best leaders will admit when they've been wrong.
And I think societally, I think this is, and I don't want to dive into politics and everything.
Ooh, this is gonna get fun. This will get juicy.
I'd rather to stay out of that fray, but
Sure.
I think the willingness to have a conversation and hear the other side's perspective and not attack the person and just have a conversation about the concept is what makes leaders' ability to hear those types of conversations that have that candor and that humility and that space, that compassion. It it becomes so vitrally charged within the individual. I can't possibly be wrong. I built it up to this level, and you just don't know what you're talking about because you're not in space. It's having that curiosity to maybe I am wrong. What would it look like if I was? And be willing to be curious about talking that through, as opposed to just thinking in their head, this person sitting across from me who I hired as an expert is an idiot and I know better.
Right. No,
So,
it's you're so right, man. Leadership's not for everybody, and the unfortunate thing is, like, I have seen more people, and I've seen good people leave businesses because they're just stifled. And
right.
I had a scenario just this last week where I was proposing a project to a client that I was referred to, and we went in, and they really wanted to do some pretty aggressive things over the quarter. And they had asked me to put a plan together to execute that plan. And I said from the very beginning that you're not going to get all this done in 90 days. And if you do, it's going to be superficial. And I'm working with the chief of staff in the business during all this. And she's, I'm the fresh voice, the fresh ear. So everyone loves to have the new guy show up. And here's the chance she latches on, and we talk about all these things. And she sees this huge opportunity that maybe I can help this visionary become a better visionary, and that she's going to get to stay there. And well, I put this plan together that included her delivering a lot of the work because she's the chief of staff and she's incredible. But she was seen as the executive assistant because that was her role before she was promoted. And she's struggling because as we go through this proposal process, she's involved, and she's like, man, you're not going to be able to get this done. What's the hope I have in this business? He's like,
Right.
if we're going to go through this same swirl again, and it's unfortunate, obviously I didn't want that client, nor was that client going to work with me, because people like that, don't really want to hear the advice. They don't, or they want to hear it. They just don't have the capability or the capacity to change. So I felt bad for this woman because she had essentially seen and is like realized that this was what she was going to get to deal with in the business. And, that sucks for somebody to realize that the person they work for isn't capable of being less controlling or less narcissistic than they are. So, those are some of the stories that aren't great, but there's a ton of stories out there where I get a text a year later from somebody who's celebrating a big win. Hey, we finally got this project. Hey, we got this. Hey, we closed this project. Do you remember such and such? We did it. We made, we were projecting, 7% net margins and we got 12. It's like, oh my God. I remember the headache we had and I remember the contract, blah, 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 all this stuff. So the, the hard ones are the ones you remember, which is so interesting to me because of, isn't that weird how of all the wins you have, the struggles are the ones that stick out, and that I can recall clearly.
So, and I think that has a lot to do with the fibers that are created through struggle and strife.
Yeah,
Those are the
well said.
ties. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time, you know, especially in today's Instagram society, they want the results, but they don't want to put in the work. And it's when you
Yeah.
put in that work that the results are actually worthwhile, because the effort and the depth, and you're not going wide, you're going deep on something specific with a group of people, and you're going through something. And it's those struggles that create those memories and the nostalgia that binds you.
Yeah. No, that
How
is so true. That you said something that hit me, which is the fibers. Like there's reactions, emotional reactions to the hard stuff. And I
Mhm,
think the hard stuff hits hard. And the good
mhm.
stuff we don't sit down and celebrate enough and say, we got to remember the fact that this fiber can be a part of us as much as the bad one can be a part of us. Um, and there is a certain unification around the hard stuff. Um, but there also should be a unification around the good too. And I'm saying that out loud to process it so that I can continue to make that be a part of what I do every day and what I'm involved in. So that's really interesting. I go back to the Instagram society that you mentioned, and I do think you're right. Um, and I've seen it more times than not be exactly what you're saying. But I choose to like have this piece of my brain have hope that there is somebody who is willing to learn and somebody who is willing to put the work in. I was having it's kind of a tangent, but kind of a funny, not funny, just a sweet story. I'm
Hear me.
outside, I'm getting some rock work done on my house, some patio stuff laid, and this father and son show up, and this guy's an incredible mason. I mean, the work he does is incredible, and his son's about 18 years old, and we live in Austin, so it's hot as hell, and they're laying this project, and the son just graduated high school. And I said to him, what do you want to do? And he goes, and the dad pops up and he goes, I don't want him to lay stones for a living. In his broken English, he said, I want him to go to school and I want him to learn to do something. So then immediately I was like, so I jumped in, and the dad was like, you tell him. So then I tell him about trade schools and how he can be incredibly successful if
Mhm.
he's mechanically minded or likes to work with his hands, how going to a trade program would give him an infinite amount of leg up on the generation of his that he could become, the owner of a trade business and make a shit ton of money and be very successful. And he was like, yeah, yeah. Now, of course, I'm gonna have to follow up and figure out where he ends up. But to your point, like that kid's the future of the world. He's 18 years old and just coming out of high school. Is obviously not going to go to college, but um, what do we, maybe he's willing to put the work in. Maybe he is, or he'll get into the Instagram world and sit there and scroll and try to figure it out and get sucked into the fact that the world that a lot of people think it should be handed to all of us. But man, Chandler, your point, you gotta put in the work and the time, and it was so important for me when I was younger. I was just like, why am I not the president of this company? It's like, well, you're 26 years old. The hell are you thinking? And there are plenty of people that are president at 26, but
But
that wasn't my path.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, no, and that's just it, right? Is you sort of, and I think a lot of us, you know, will sit there and commiserate with, a coworker or someone that's there beside us. And, we're looking to, have ideas expressed and shared and implemented. And that's the most important thing, is the implementation, right? You can ask and you can send out all the surveys that you want, but the reason why the Post-it note is one of the greatest inventions out of something that never should have been invented is because there was execution on the idea. And it was a group of people coming up with some thoughts and having some ideas, and then actually doing something with the information that they pulled out. And I think that's where we get a lot of misses. We'd never have any of the successes if we didn't have the failures, because it's those failures that guide the way and light the path with the burning dumpsters that they are. And
No,
I
I get
think
it.
there's such a fear or such a distaste for failure by narrow-sighted leadership, where, it really should be sort of that bounce and move forward. Okay, that didn't work. What didn't work? This part right here. Okay, so either let's have a 6-degree shift or a complete pivot, but we need to keep moving forward. We can't just shame and blame our way out of this.
What's some of the advice you give your clients on communication and, creating an environment that's curious and not critical?
I think the moment that you feel defensive, ask yourself why.
Yeah.
And is it insulting that this kid is a kid? Is that the problem? Because if you feel insecure about that, then explore that. If this idea was something that you've heard before, maybe this is an opportunity for mentorship and guidance and leadership. If this is a new and innovative idea, but you think it might fail because it sounds too similar to this other idea, maybe explore why this is slightly different, but be curious. And all of that is going on inside behind the eyeballs before you open your mouth. And then if you're unsure, or what you're about to say does not solve the problem, is not kind, is not timely, and doesn't allow space for innovation and creativity, maybe pause and say, I'll have to consider that. That's an interesting perspective. Anyone else have any thoughts? And invite more feedback. That would be.
I want to get a not a tattoo, maybe a bumper sticker.
Sure.
Or a placard right here that says "Lead with Curiosity."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right, because that's like such a huge point of where I think we've gone wrong a lot, is that, we, society, I, me, you, aren't curious enough. We're quick to judge and quick to have an opinion, but 2 ears, one mouth for a reason, right?
Yeah, precisely. Listen twice as much as you speak. And it's funny because, these are the lessons that I'm teaching my 10-year-old and the 55-year-old that I work with, the same, right? And it's a matter of taking a beat, pausing for a moment. Nothing's that important, and be curious and just listen for a moment, and then create a plan, get buy-in, take a step forward, and ship it, right? So if you were to describe yourself in 3 words, what 3 words would you use?
Well, you're not going to believe one of them. Curious.
Yeah.
Curious would be one, I hope. I'd love to say humble. And I believe that. And I think, I've been in some scenarios where it's perfectly clear that humility is the only way you're going to get through it. And then I think the third one would probably be, what's the one I would use? They're all in the same vein. I think playful. Playful would be a word, and you could say cheerful, you could say sarcastic, but I think playful would be something that I aspire. So those 3 words may not be those three words would be how I aspire, right? What I really want to aspire to be, and how I want to reflect as a leader, and what I want to say out loud. And I mean, I'm flawed like the rest of us, but
Sure.
I do think that focusing on being curious, and humble and playful, takes you a long way.
I think it's hard to be a jerk when you're playful, right? When you're sarcastic,
Right.
right? But
Yeah.
playful, you're trying to, you know, bring a bit of joy into a society that's forgotten how to be playful. And
Right.
I think that's a large component of the frustration and the loneliness that comes around it is, just some leaders just take themselves way too seriously to
Yeah.
to to
Well,
bring
it's because
like
they think because they're in the position they're in that they have to be this, you know,
rigid.
um, superior, just all knowing. And like you said, and you and I clued in on earlier, a lot of these entrepreneurs just want to be able to let their guard down and not have to be the boss and not have to be the one that knows all the answers. Um, and is humble enough to say, I don't know. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. I can
Yeah.
brainstorm with you and figure it out, but I don't know. And so
So
yeah.
scared of the I don't know phrase because then, they're not they're not the ones that should be leading the charge. And it's no, that vulnerability, that curiosity, that willingness to ask the question, that is courage and bravery, right? And in full
That's it.
effect.
That's it.
Do you have a quote that you aspire to follow or a mantra that you use?
Man, that's a good question. I don't have a specific one, but I'm going to reach over here and show you two things that I do read as much as I can. And I don't know if you can see this.
Oh,
Um,
love it. Oh, yep.
do you know him? Obviously,
Yep.
that's a good one. And then all obviously, this is another one that's really impactful for me. Um,
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Brian Hall. Beautiful.
So these two books live here. They're daily, and I get a lot out of it. I mean, I could pull up a dozen quotes that I think, but continuing to read those two things and stay humble and stay focused as much as one can do, um, is is what I try to.
Do you try to maintain a morning routine or journaling or anything in the evening?
Right.
Is there
Yeah.
structure?
So there is some structure and there's also some flexibility. So I, for years, wasn't an early exercise guy. I loathed exercise for a long time till I got in my late 30s. And I was a 7 a.m. exercise person. I've now started getting up and going to a 5:30 class Monday through
Oh,
Thursday. Yeah,
yeah.
so I get up at 5, go meet a group of 11 other people at 5:30 to 6:30, and never really understood what everyone was saying about having that morning time, that
Yeah.
time to yourself where you could, you know, and it's nice taking up at 6:30, and I'm like, oh man, I got a little bit of time before the kids get up. My wife's up. We can have a conversation. We can have a cup of coffee, and all of a sudden, and then so yeah, I've gotten into that routine. I have not always been that guy, but
Yeah.
I'm gradually getting into that, and it's becoming impactful.
Everyone's bed is comfortable in the morning.
Yeah, especially at
Five.
5 a.m.
That's willpower right there.
There it is.
What would you say is the one thing that you're most afraid of? And this can be as vulnerable as you want. Business, personal. I'm open for whatever you got for.
Most afraid of, man, that's a bold one. I don't really get afraid in business anymore. Um, I don't really focus on. I mean, because I've fortunate that I put a lot out there, so I'm hopefully convinced I get a lot back. Um, Here's what I'll tell you. I'm most fearful of the health of myself and others.
Mhm.
Um, that's what scares me the most. Just wanting to ensure that the people closest to me stay healthy as much as they can and have live a full life, right? And that could
The-
be my children, that could be my friends. Um, So yeah, that's
The one thing all the wealthy try to buy is health, right? So
health
that's
and
such a
time.
core, yeah, of what what does success look like to you?
Yeah, great question. So it goes back to uh, what I said earlier, which they're correlated. Is that success looks like being able to spend the last formative years with my family. I've got a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 9-year-old.
Hmm.
And I have never been nostalgic. I've never been that guy. My wife's always been nostalgic, but I feel
Yeah.
like right now time is just warp speed. And it hasn't always been that way.
Yeah. Hmm.
For me, when the kids were under the age of 10, the years are slow. Um, but now it's been um, it's been hard to look back and go, man, this is in 5 minutes. My 9-year-old's going to be in high school, and I'm going to be figuring out, you know, what to do with that. But or what it looks like after that. Thankfully, I've been married 18 years and have a fantastic marriage, and my wife and I we have our own identities. We have our identity together. We have our interests together and separate, which is great. But success looks like being able to financially spend time with them and soak up the moments. Like we're doing some travel this summer, and my kids go to summer camp in New Hampshire where it's cool, and being able to send them there financially and have them live the experiences that you know I did or didn't. So anyway, it's been an interesting run, but I'm really really grateful to have the success I have.
I love that. That's great. If you could, what is your favorite superhero? And I mean, you don't have to go Marvel, DC. You can go inspirational personality, maybe mentor or someone that you really aspire or look up to. Yeah, but the whole thing is all open. What do you see?
Say that again. Sorry, I was getting a message. Sorry.
Yeah. What is your favorite superhero?
Oh,
And
interesting. What is my favorite superhero? Uh, I never. This is a great. I can't believe I'm gonna say this because I've never been asked that question. Um, but I'm gonna say this is weird. Wonder Woman, and I'll tell you why.
okay, hit me.
Um, I'm raising two daughters, a 15-year-old and a 9-year-old.
Mhm.
I have um a badass independent wife who's an entrepreneur herself. Um, but Wonder Woman, I think would say, you could do this even though you're a woman, even though that that you could get things done and be successful. And I do think the image of Wonder Woman is probably not portrayed the way that she would actually look. She would probably be a badass mom of 3 kids who's out there crushing the world and starting a business and doing stuff. 'Cause I think
Oh,
that's the truth.
right,
But
right.
I do hope that you know, being able to be successful as a woman and carving your own way is a pretty cool thing to idolize or look up to.
I I'm gonna wrap it there. I mean, there are so many things that I think resonate between you and and I could pull on a million more threads. But I mean, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts and ideas and everything you laid out for us today. I deeply, deeply appreciate everything that you've shared. Thank you so much, Matt.
Oh, Chandler, thanks so much for the opportunity. It was nice to chat, and it's nice to be asked hard questions. I think we don't necessarily do that enough, and to each other and push each other. And these questions have certainly given me some things to reflect on and be grateful for. So thank you for your time, and thanks for the candor.
Beauty. Well, we'll share all the ways to get in touch.
Please.
LinkedIn site and all of the others. Is there any closing thoughts that you want to share or anything that maybe we didn't touch on that were important to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think w- just you said it. I think it's behind you. Be kind. I would say if I could change that mantra, it would be, stay curious, work hard, and be kind. But I think um, just be grateful, man. I think the journey's not always fun, but in the end, being grateful for what we have is what I think we should focus on more.
We value those that are hardest to get, I think. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of don't necessarily understand what hard to get is these days. Some of us do a little bit more than we should. And it's a balance nonetheless. Thank you so much. And
Got it.
look forward
Thank you,
to it again.
Chandler. I look forward to seeing you.